Hey guys, welcome to the channel, and it's time to make a DIY mold frame. You can buy these things. They are relatively expensive. They're normally CNC milled, and the idea of that is that your actual mold itself, which then fits inside a frame that goes around the outside here and helps protect the inner 3D printed either in resin or filament mold. So it's going to provide strength, and it's going to provide some thermal protection as well from where the nozzle touches the mold. And the reason for that is, if you look at this one, it's not actually the original one. I've thrown those away. They've already had their number of goes, and they've already been destroyed. And this one you can see is getting destroyed as well. It's already compressed, or it's sunk in there. What happens is, obviously, when the nozzle touches here, the nozzle's hot, so it just burns this top and melts it away completely. So what I did do is I made this little part here, which then goes into the mold itself, and then the mold sticks together, and then your nozzle goes onto that, injects the plastic in there. It works quite well, but obviously because this is not being split, when you take the part out of the mold, it's still stuck in here, and you've got to take this out separately. So that's a little bit problematic. So what I'm going to do here, and I do have a milling machine, but I'm not going to be using that. Just going to be using just general stuff such as a welding machine and a drill, although I may use the drill on the milling machine itself, but this can be done with a drill press. So the idea is to make the frame like this around here. 2 location holes, which the one side will have pins in, and then so when the mold goes together it locates correctly every time. And then at the top, obviously, your little funnel sprue for the plastic to go into the mold, and then the mold will sort of sit like that in there. And then this, in this case, is not going to be aluminium. I'm going to make this out of steel, because that's easier to get, I guess, and to weld together. So the idea is, and I'm not going to show you how I cut all this metal because I've already cut it. So this is what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be taking these 2 plates like this, obviously just cleaning them off first, and then I'm going to weld this together. And then after I've welded that, I'm going to be putting these bars here. This is 16 by 16 square bar. It's all made, it's all steel. So it's going to go obviously either side. It's going to go like that. Then I'm going to have those pieces going in there, and another piece going on there, like that. Then this is going to be welded together like that. It's not going to be welded to the frame at the bottom yet. I will then do the top half, because it's obviously only the bottom half. The top half will be exactly the same. And then once this is welded together, I will basically clamp the 2 together to make that hole over there line up, and I'll drill these 2 holes through so that they line up perfectly. Once that is done, I will then obviously just take them apart. And then you've got an option here. You can either have this bolt onto the bottom over here, or weld it onto the bottom, and I think I'm going to be welding it on. And then you've got another option. I think I'm just going to manually clamp it together, but you could have bolts or put them in later through here so that the molds are actually clamped together and you've got different holding force. What I'm also going to do is, normally the mold just basically sits in there, but I can have, I think I'm going to do that is just have in the actual molds themselves holes drilled in maybe 4 or 3 or 2 places, and then the thread on the other side, so this will actually be bolted onto the frame, and then this cannot come out obviously when the molds are split apart. And then if I get to that point a little bit later, when the molds come apart, this won't, as I say, separate from the mold frame. And you can also put injection pins over here. The nice thing about this is, or that I like about this, is that it's relatively cheap. You just buy your flat bar, you buy your square metal bar, and then you can make these frames any size you want. compared to the frame you need. This is, like I said, 16 by 16. Where I live I can get 20 by 20, so it'll be a little bit thicker, a little bit higher. But at the moment I'm just playing around, so my mold depth is not thick enough to go further than that. In fact, this is going to be thicker. So in other words, this mold will actually be a little bit thicker if it has to fit into the frame, because that's got to be exactly level with that. And that'll, in the end of the day, save resin or filament, or whichever one you want to do. So I'm going to weld these frames together, or weld these parts together now, and start the building process. So after welding the two plates together, that's what it looks like, and then that has to be ground smooth, which I did with the grinder, and then this is sort of how it turns out at the end of that. But as you can see, I've got two flat spots, one over here and another one over there, and obviously there's a little bit of a section there where the welds didn't take 100%, but I'm not too worried about that side, because once that's put on there, and these ones here only basically polish the one sides, because that's going to be the inside, and the other sides will be polished when it's finished. So then let's just put that there like that, and then the other one goes there like that. And it's going to be that sort of a configuration. So those two are swapped around. Okay, it's going to be sort of like that. That's what it's going to look like. And as you can see, this one here doesn't really come into play too much. It's very, it's basically covered up by this bar over here mostly. But this one over here it's actually not that deep. Although I've been sanding this for many hours to try and get it to this point. But I don't think that'll have any impact on anything, as the mold basically will rest on the rest of the thing over there. And yeah, I think that'll be okay. I think I'll just make, or try to remember that the mold will have to, or the plastic will have to be filled in from that side over there. So my attempt here was to try and get this as flat as possible, which I think I was successful in doing. I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but that's pretty flat, so there's no rocking going back and forth there. That's as basically as flat as you're going to get it from sanding, which is exactly what you sort of want. So the mold sits, or the force of the is basically spread out against the whole flat part over here. Mine is this little flat spot over here. Okay, so the next part will be to put these on there like that, and then just going to make sure they've got to be right. I'm just going to make sure that's obviously 100% square, and then I'm going to tack weld these in place, and then I'm going to weld this. Once I've welded that, I'm going to take the other half and also weld it, and then they will be put on top of each other, clamped together, and then I will drill through each side over here, or it'll be that side there and there, so that the alignment pins line up 100%. Take it apart, and then I'll probably weld this part over here to the base over there. But what I was thinking was, if you do get a base like this and you want to change the depth of your mold, and this was bolted onto that, you could just replace that part and then have different ones like this and keep the base the same. But obviously, presuming you're going to keep the size the same from the length and the width side. And you could just have different depth parts over here for your mold and use the same base if you get that 100% the way you want it. Otherwise, just weld it on there, and then you can have different ones where you the whole thing is completely, and that's probably what I'm going to do. This one I'm going to weld this whole thing like that, so it's one complete unit, and then obviously just sand it down, dress the welds, and then that'll be that. So move on to the next step. We'll be welding these things together. Okay, so I've clamped now the side walls onto the base plate, and the measurement between there and there is the same. there and there's the same, and perpendicular diameter is the same. So it's 100% square. So I've welded the one part together, the frame together. I'm going to now use this frame to basically duplicate exactly what has to be done again in this way. So I'll put it together like that, and then I'm going to use these clamps to clamp it together from the side so that everything is, I'm going to do it now, but it's going to be clamped together so it creates an exact copy of the one below it. So I'm just going to weld this together and then dress the welds as is, and then thereafter we will be drilling the holes through either side here to make the location pins. So this is an update on the clamping technique that I was going to do. I was initially going to clamp it on the sides here, but it turns out that that doesn't really work that well. So the best way is to clamp it directly from the top, and then I just use the hammer just to gently tap it in until I get dimensional accuracy, obviously using this over here to try to get it as perfect or as in line with as the mold below it, or the jig, let's call it, below it, as the one's forming a jig for the other one. So okay, I'm just going to go weld this now. So I decided to remake the actual one that I was using for the jig because I wasn't that happy with it, and well, I'll make something once if I can make it 3 times. So that's what it looks like after the weld, or maybe I should show it the other way around. That's what it looks like when it's welded, and yeah, welded all sides there excepting on the insides, and then after I've dressed the welds, that's sort of what it looks like. This is still going to be sanded to try to get it as smooth as possible so that these two basically will then sandwich together for that port that has to go through there. Okay, I've marked it up with marking paint. Unfortunately I didn't record the first part of it, so I just made a line across there, there, and I've made the center position there. But it doesn't actually have to be in the center, it's just as long as the two halves match up with each other. That is your most important part there. Okay, so it'll be there and there. Well, this one didn't come out that nicely. Okay, so now we're going to just punch that. To help with that, let's use my little hammer. So my initial plan was to clamp these two together like that way, but it works out that the thickness of these square bars is not equal between the top and the bottom, and the reason for that is this bottom has been sanded down more than the top. So if you try to clamp it together, it actually pulls the mold out of alignment. So the next option is I'm going to be using this super glue, which comes with a catalyst, although I won't be using the catalyst, but it'll still stick very quickly. And I'm going to stick these two molds together and try get this inside as dimensionally accurate as I can, because that is obviously the most important part. I will then just file the inside here to make sure that everything is 100% correct on the mold itself. But before I glue it, first going to clean a little bit with some acetone, just to to make sure that everything is 100% clean. Then let's just do a quick mock up here. So the sides and then the top, let's just be about like that. Okay, this is the point of no return. So let's put a bit of glue on the, there we go, like that. Bring the two molds together. Yep, that's it. The molds have actually stuck together already. So yeah, that's it. So now I'm just going to let this dry a little bit longer. Okay, now the two are glued together, I'm going to, I was first going to put the pins in and then I was going to, file the inside, but I think I'm going to file the inside first to make sure it's dimensionally the same, everything, all the sides, while it's glued together, and then drill it and then break it apart again. So just to make sure that everything is aligned within the bracket here, I'm going to basically just sand the inside here, not sand, file the inside here to make sure that all the inner dimensions meet up exactly. Ah yes, I've questioned my life choices many times during this project, and this is one of them, and that's filing this to get this exactly the same on both sides of the mold. But it's done now, so let's move over to the drill press or milling machine just to drill these two holes. Okay, now it's time to drill the port or the sprue. Here it goes in here for the plastic to go through the mold frame into the mold cavity here, or not really the mold cavity where the mold's going to sit. Your resin mold or filament printed mold is going to sit over here. So to do that I'm going to use a center drill first to just make sure that I'm actually getting into the right spot here. Because obviously the top of where the two molds are glued together is not, there's a ridge there, so the drill may want to wander. Okay, that looks like the spot. Okay, I've now swapped out the center drill for a normal drill to complete the drilling. Now I'm going to be using this part over here to open up the little port over here. Okay, at the end of that, pretty much looks like that, with the port there, and then I've already put these pins in here, although I just temporarily pushed them in there. And you may have noticed that these pins are not centered anymore. I've moved them off center in case I want to move or put another port on either end over here. It's not going to interfere with the pins. So now the next step is to split this, and then this will be welded to the base plates. So now I'm going to actually weld this base to the bottom over here, and I've made this little mold over here that I'm going to use as a reference to make sure that the heights and everything are all the same. So before I weld it, I'm going to actually glue the two pieces together to make sure that there's no movement and everything is correct. and hopefully everything then stays the same and there won't be too much warpage. So I'm going to obviously weld it very slowly and let things cool down. I've also changed the background here, which is not glued in yet, it's just or stuck down to a piece of wood. But let me know what you think. I think it's going to give better contrast from the workpiece to the background as opposed to the black. But as I said, please let me know in the comments below. So let me just weld this off camera, and then I'm going to dress the welds as well. So after welding and dressing the welds, this is what the sort of frame looks like. I also gave it a quick paint here to prevent a bit of rusting, but I don't think the paint's going to stay on here very long. It is high temperature paint, and I gave it a clear coat of lacquer, but as I say, I don't think this paint's going to stay on here very long with the temperature and that. But yeah, they're the two sides over there. Then I got these two molds over here. They will then fit into there like that. I've not drilled the holes over there to hold the mold in place yet. That'll be done at a later stage, not during this video. And then the other one fits in there as well, just pushes in there like that. Then the two molds will obviously go together as such. Get the location pins like that, it'll fit together like that, and then be clamped like that. You could also have it, as I mentioned earlier in the beginning of the video, have bolts holding this stuff together. But let's actually see if this is going to actually work and what the outcome of the actual project is at the end of the day. Okay, I got the mold lined up. Let's see how that goes. Okay, so let's look at the mold now. It is not hot, but it's a big piece of steel, so it'll take quite a lot to heat up. But after time, I mean, if you did this automated, I think this would actually get pretty hot after a while. But let's see how it looks on the inside. And the first thing you can see is that the mold is separated, or the mold frame is separated from the mold itself, and that's why these bolts are important to actually hold it down, which I will definitely attend to. So then we take that out there, just goes back in there, and then we can see perfect little carabiner that's been injection molded here. I must say I'm super impressed with this, the way it came out. I don't know if you can really see how it's looking, but yeah, the actual plastic went through there, through the metal part, which is obviously a little bit warm there, but that's to be expected, and then through there into the mold. Now let's just see if we can actually, well, we can look on this side before we get that out. I don't see any damage to the actual mold itself. This is PETG, so it can handle a little bit of temperature, although there is a bit of deformation taking place in that one little spot there, and I must say this is actually warm. The mold itself is warm, and I can see over there it's starting to sink in. So the actual mold itself isn't doing too well. You'll probably be able to do about 3 or 4 shots with this and then throw it away. That's why I'll be trying resin next time to see if that improves it with the high temperature resin. But let's see if we can get this out. Okay, that broke off. Okay, it's really stuck in there. There we go. Okay, and there is the carabiner. At the bottom here you can see, I don't know where that's actually coming from. There's a little bit of deformation happening there on the bottom there. But on the top here it's actually perfect the way it looks. Let's break those off. And then there's the carabiner. I think it actually came out quite nicely, just fix up there a little bit, but that's actually an error in the mold itself. So I'm actually super stoked at how this actually came out, and this is definitely a success. But let's just have some takeaways from making this mold, or this mold frame. It wasn't easy to make. It actually took a lot of effort. It may actually be easier to buy one of these things, but obviously with shippage and that, it would be quite expensive for me to do that. But I'm actually super impressed at how this turned out and how well it's actually working. So guys, if you find any value in this type of video, please consider subscribing, and I will see you in the next one.